Welcome to the Geneva Graduate Institute In Conversation With podcast series. I'm Lena Menge, Manager of Strategic Partnerships and Public Relations. This episode features a conversation between Enrico Letta, President of the Jacques Delors Institute and former Prime Minister of Italy, and Christine Lutringer, Executive Director and Senior Researcher of the Albert Hirschman Centre on Democracy at the Geneva Graduate Institute. This discussion focuses on the challenges European democracies are currently facing and highlights concrete proposals towards building more effective ways for citizens to participate.
President Letta, thank you very much for accepting to participate in this podcast. Our conversation today is focused on the European construction or reconstruction of its democratic project in the face of the populist challenge. More specifically, I would like to explore with you the responses that you have been leading in this context and discuss how they relate to the different futures that are being imagined. I would like to start with the growing electoral strength that right-wing and populist parties have displayed in Europe in recent years. We saw it also very recently with the elections in Italy and Sweden. My first question relates to the mode of engagement of these parties. How is it affecting the ways in which the other parties and movements have been mobilizing and what they have achieved?
First of all, I think there's a big question related and around the language that we use. And that was the case during last elections, but it is, I think, at the European level, one of the most divisive topics. If you take the different relationship between parties, populist parties or traditional parties. I think when I mean language, I mean, first of all, the way in which we raise questions or we try to answer questions, or the way in which, for instance, we use social media or we try to apply the normal development of arguments. And there, I think there's the most important and the most, I would say, high level of difference. If I may say, the key topic is, first of all, about the complexity of the language we use. In my last electoral campaign, but also in the elections that we tried to follow during the last years in Europe, we saw the big difference among parties and using different ways to reduce complexity to simple topics, simple statements. And I feel populist parties, I would say, more effective in trying to raise topics, linking them to day-by-day life of people. And I saw our problem, speaking about traditional parties, in the way in which we use general terms and not the image or the experience of one single person. And general terms means keeping distance in empathic terms or in the way in emotional terms. And I think there's the big topic. Emotions are the ways in which populist parties usually are able to keep a close relationship with voters. And when I say emotions, first of all, I say fears. And there is the big difference in the fact that usually traditional parties are trying to reassure people. And populist parties are trying to raise fears. And last experience in Europe, of course, fears were at the top because of the war. And the aggression, the Russian aggression to Ukraine played a huge role because raising fears was not so difficult in a period in which the war was bringing fears, was creating an environment, a fears environment. And that was, in my view, very, very useful for right and populist parties. So language, emotions, fears, not general terms, but names of normal people and experience of normal people. And that was, in my view, one of the most important issues in the last period. Of course, I'm trying to be very objective in my analysis. I can be less objective. I can be more biased. But if I may say, I think we have to recognize that sometimes populist language is more effective because of this capacity to use emotions. I think they are a problem. And the big risk is to use emotions always in terms of raising fears. And I think it's at the end of the day, it's something very negative, because raising fears means that once you win the elections, it is very difficult to deal with expectations, and then the frustration is behind the corner, there, immediately present.
To build on this idea of the expectations that populist parties nurture in their campaigns, in their claims, I would like to connect with another element that was very powerful for me also when I read your book, Anima e Cacciavite, Saul and Screwdriver, in precisely analyzing the context in which democratic politics is at play now in Europe and in Italy. And you say in this book at some point that we have allowed the response to legitimate needs of protection to be the exclusive prerogative of the populist right. And you have called for a change in paradigm. So on that, I would like to also hear you on the inclusiveness of democracy, both in terms of the inclusiveness of participation and inclusiveness of policies, which connects to this point on solidarity and social welfare as essential components of democracy. And this point is, I think, very effectively captured in your book when you connect the end of the month with the end of the world. I would like, therefore, to ask you what the states in Europe, in the European Union and beyond, have delivered in terms of social policies and welfare, and according to you, what they should deliver.
I start by my experience in the last electoral campaign we had in Italy. It was for me a nightmare, the fact that we were in the worst summer ever, with catastrophic climate disasters we had on every subject. So the climate change drama was there around us, and we weren't able to impose the subject as the subject number one. Why? Not because of the lack of presence of signals, clues about the fact that climate change is really a danger, but because in the same period, the problem of the end of the month was the most crucial issue for the people. When I say end of the month, we had during this electoral campaign the problem of cost of energy. When you pay no more 100 euros as you used to pay normally, but you pay 400 euros suddenly. Or if you have an SME, if you run an SME, and usually you pay 100,000 euros, and suddenly you have to pay 500,000 euros, and you don't have money. And if you have to borrow money to cover these costs, that will create a problem for the jobs that you are hiring, and it's a disaster for your investments, and you are close to stop your activity. It is clear that the problem of the end of the world comes second. And this is why I think we have to consider that one of the most important challenges in the future is how to combine social sustainability and environmental. And if we don't succeed in creating this link and having policies, subventions, investments able to link these two sustainabilities and making one from two, and not having a sort of conflict between the two. So at the end of the month and the end of the word. If you have the problem of the end of the month, end of the word will always be second, will always be marginalized by the problem of how to get the end of the month. And for instance, all the topic of mobility, of the way to produce energy by renewables, in my view, we have really to connect it with the social sustainability. And that means long-term investments. That means long-term investments at, first of all, European level. This is why there's a European topic that is crucial, because you can have this kind of European long-term view. That is the only view that allows you to get the two together, to combine the two, and not to have first the end of the month, and then if we have energy or psychic energies or money to invest in the second, so environmental. No, we have to combine the two. And the only way to do it is to have long-term investments at European level, able then to be applied at national level. That means that we need a strong European level, able to have these long-term investments with binding rules, without the possibility to change it, reducing the targets, because we have to higher the level of the targets, higher the bar. If we don't, then at the end of the month we'll win. Always. And if we marginalize the end of the word topics, then we will continue to be on the direction that we are having today. We are in the days in which COP27 is taking place. But for the present promises that governments are launching, we will be at the disaster at the end of this century. Even with the application of the promises, can you imagine if even these promises are not applied? And I think we have to change completely the direction and the strategies, and we need to do so a strong boost by and from the European Union, because only this level can be effective. And that brings us to say that participation, political participation, needs to have this European level. Otherwise, if you have only participation at national or local level, then it will be impossible to get these results.
These issues that you have highlighted, climate change, environmental and social sustainability, are very much intergenerational issues that will primarily impact young and future generations. And it very much connects, I think, with this dimension of youth participation that you have yourself been very active on. And I would like to hear you about this. To what extent, according to you, can we understand youth participation or its absence as a reconfiguration of exit, voice, and loyalty, to use Albert Hirschman's framework?
I'm very happy to try to use this triad, Hirschman triad, exit, voice, and loyalty, to this topic that is so crucial. You know, youth today, there are many issues related to youth participation. First of all, the fact that usually in Europe, youth is a minority. There are only few countries where you have a large youth in terms of part of the society. My country, for instance, Italy, youth is a marginal and very small part of the society. In our aging societies, youth are playing, unfortunately, a very marginal role. So the key issue there is how to be able to give voice to youth. The main problem is marginality in quantitative terms, and the fact that when you mentioned the term exit, in reality, my first meaning when I think, what does it mean for the Italian youth, exit? That means at the end of the day, the exodus that is today having a place in the fact that Italian young people are leaving the country because they don't find in Italy the possibility, the opportunities that they want to catch. and they are leaving the country. Immigration today in Italy, the problem of immigration is not people coming, it's people leaving. And when I say people leaving, I say, first of all, young people leaving Italy. That is the main problem of exit. And leaving the country, having a marginal voice, creates a big problem of loyalty, of course. So how to reaffirm this exit voice loyalty, and in terms of pushing loyalty and giving voice. Of course, it's necessary to give power to youth, to give more voice to youth. One of the proposals I try to introduce and to, I would say, make successful was the fact that, for instance, to change the average for the voting system and to allow people 16 years old to vote in national elections is maybe too little in terms of enlarging the way or empowering a voice of youth. But it's something that we can easily do, is the fact that to enlarge youth participation, to allow people of 16 or 17 to vote, or to create a sort of blue quotas. So we have the pink quotas, quota for instance, women in board of companies at European level. Why don't we introduce the same level of quotas for young people in boards, to avoid to have them out of the places where power is run? It's one very simple, and I understand maybe one can say marginal. One can define marginal, these kind of proposals. But we have to start from marginal topics to raise the general topic. The general topic is the lack of voice of youth in our societies. And the other point is that the only way to give voice to youth is to give importance and to give voice to the two main topics that are at the very core of youth engagement: environment and individual rights. And for instance, in the electoral campaign I saw in Italy, these two topics were completely marginalized. And it was a pity. I think it was a problem. It was the way in which youth was marginalized during all the electoral campaign. And I underline these topics, and I would like to say that the only way to push youth participation is to raise environment, individual rights. And I think the future of our societies will be a future of youth, of success of youth and participation of youth, if we are able to raise these two main topics.
This theme of youth engagement and youth participation is also central to one of the research projects that we have here at the Institute, at the Albert Hirschman Centre on Democracy, where we map the practices of engagement and protest of young people across 4 European countries. And we see on the one hand what you have highlighted here, that youth-led social movements share some common frustrations with the ways in which climate change is not tackled. And at the same time, we see that since the pandemic, more and more youth have turned towards local activism and solutions that are not necessarily national or global, but really embedded in their everyday lives. At the same time, those issues need to be tackled at the global and at least European level. So I would like to invite you to provide some concluding reflections on the transnational dimensions of European democracy and on the extent to which you see that democratic action has been moving towards this level.
The European Union democracy is one of the main topics for the future, because many important decisions for the daily life of people in Europe are taken at the European level. But we know very well that the vote of citizens is very influential for local elections, for national elections, very few influence or very little influence at the European level. A citizen, I vote in my city, Pisa in Italy, where I belong, And my vote, I know that my vote can influence the future of my city, can change the mayor of the city, or can confirm the mayor. The same at national level, I see the influence of my vote. I agree with what government is doing. I confirm parties pushing the government. I want to change the government. I know who vote for. That is not the case at European level, where decisions are taken by a complex system, democratic system, but very, very complicated system. And even the vote for the European Parliament is very weak, the link that we have with the way in which decisions are taken at the European level. This is why the European Union launched for the last 2 years this very interesting exercise of the Conference on the Future of Europe. And this conference, after months and months of work with citizens working, was a conference pushing for new ideas on how to implement a new form of democracies and how to empower democracy at transnational European level. And I underline one of them, that is, in my view, the most important one, is the introduction of transnational lists for the election of the European Parliament. In reality, I think we can't continue voting only with national lists at the European Parliament. As Italian, I vote for the Italians, and I have an Italian member of parliament representing my vote or my constituency. It is not enough, because the decisions are European decisions. It's not just 27 countries, one plus another. This is why I think we need to have transnational lists. I need to have these lists able to attract votes and voters, not because of nationality of the vote or the member of the parliament that is elected by these votes, but because of the meanings, because of what they think, what the ideas of values or proposals. Is the only way to make Europe really a democracy, a true and full democracy. So I push for this idea of transnational lists. And transnational lists, in my view, have to be connected with the choice of the President of the European Commission. We can't continue with the President of the European Commission a result of a negotiation, a diplomatic negotiation among leaders of the European Council. It doesn't work. We need to link the President of the European Commission to the vote of the citizens and to the vote of the transnational lists. I think it is crucial, and it is absolutely necessary to work in that direction. It's the way to implement some of the ideas of the Conference on the Future of Europe. It is a way to fulfill one of the big requests of citizens to have full democracy at European level.
Thank you very much for sharing your analysis of the challenges that European democracy has been facing, and also to share some concrete proposals towards building some more effective ways of participating, and also some further legitimacy for Europe at the different scales at which citizens can participate. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
That was Enrico Letta and Christine Lutringer discussing the European reconstruction of its democratic project in the face of populist challenges. For more information about the Institute, please visit graduateinstitute.ch. I'm Lena Menge. Thanks for listening.